when they've actually examined the affliction that brought them to me, like, wait a minute, Covey has a really powerful quote, and it says, begin with the end in mind. And sometimes we can only forecast so far. Sometimes we're only willing, but I like to frame forward. Like, what does this look like in 3 to 5 years? And when a person can actually forecast at least enough of that, and they see, okay, this is going to head towards a brick wall, just like, of course, with the Dow, you can only know so much day to day, but sometimes in our businesses, in our personal lives, in our communities, you can forecast and see, like, wait a minute, this is not going to end well. I'm not going to be the exception to the rule.
Let's impact some men today. I think we're going to do a great job. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Man Podcast, where we connect men in pursuit of their potential. Join us as we embrace discomfort, cultivate community, and put wind in each other's sails. Now, before we jump into the episode, I first want to encourage you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share this podcast with somebody else you know will get value from it, as it helps us out to continue providing you with these amazing conversations. Also, to the guys that are listening, I encourage you to check out the Noble Knights men's groups, where you'll find the support, accountability, and the mentorship you need to achieve your goals. Join us and become a part of a community of like-minded men on a mission to improve themselves and elevate their capacity for life. And I'm excited because we're getting some wind in our sails today. Not the first time on the podcast. Don't call it a comeback. He's been here for years. It is counselor, podcaster, consultant out of Washington, D.C., Jahmaal Marshall, back on the show. Good to see you, man.
My man, Ted, thanks for having me, man. And a happy 2025 to you, bro. We have crossed over. Yes. Maybe a little bit later, but we have crossed over. Some people didn't make it, but we did. God's grace.
Listen, man. God's grace. Pour out a little liquor for those who aren't with us right now. But I usually have the guests introduce themselves. If folks didn't listen to the first one, or maybe they listened to the first one and they need a little refresher, instead of having you introduce yourself, give the whole backstory. My question to start off this podcast is, what is new in your world, man?
What is new in my world?
Yeah. Wow. What is new in your world in 2025?
One of the newest things I would say is I'm a podcast host myself. So the podcast Listen and Speak, which will be turning this year actually into the Leader's Burnout Blueprint, is now a top 2.5 globally ranked podcast. And so we did an audit of that. Just amazing to see the reach that it's making. I used to hate the sound of my voice, and now that voice is reaching across the globe and also providing 30% of revenue for the business. So which is crazy, man. That's new in my world. And also I have my first keynote of the year, not my first keynote, but I'm the keynote and the end note at an event down in Tennessee. So I will be down there January 20th through the 22nd. And I will be tackling the stage throughout the remainder of the year, both domestically and globally. So yes, that's new in my world, bro.
I love that, man. I love that. Because last time we spoke, we mentioned a lot about burnout.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a lot about self-sabotaging behaviors, right? You beautifully depicted, and it's something I've said over and over again on the podcast since, and I hope you don't mind, but I take the wisdom from the guests and I try and perpetuate it forward, right? This is what it's all about. I believe I'm a culmination of the men who've poured into me, and I would imagine the folks listening are gathering the advice from the guests. But you mentioned that gap between the reaction and the response, the dopamine release that our brain is used to, which keeps us in this endless loop. Even though we might find success for a little while, it falls off here and there. How has your progress into 2025 played into your energy and your focus into what you're doing with your business? Because I imagine a lot of business owners listening can get that burnout, can get that, what am I doing this for feeling when stagnation hits. You're getting some success, you're getting some progress. How has that translated into your energy levels with the business?
Man, put plainly, Ted, I want to do it. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you have, seriously, when you have that energy in reserve, And I know because you know your audience is mostly men. I'm sure you have some females listening. You know, athletes will do stuff, especially marathon runners, to keep energy in reserve, so they have that win to make that full burst to finish. You know, this is very much a marathon. It is not a 50-meter dash. It's not a 200-meter dash. You know, in the Olympics, we love the Shakaris, we love the Knowles, we love the. I can name a list of just those superstars who are the media darlings. But you know, those Kenyans and those Slovenians who are like doing like the cross country. It's like, oh yeah, that's. But I respect them because they are literally storing up energy for a very long haul. And so I'd say definitely towards the end of the year, taking time off, but not taking time off, making sure during that time off, I'm not only fortifying myself physically, but fortifying myself mentally, psychologically,
Mm.
physiologically, spiritually, so that this whole listen and speak actually works like a well oiled machine. I tell each of my clients, whether I'm working in corporate, in a workshop, or one on one, your business will grow to the degree that you do. If I'm not growing, the business is not going to grow. Externally, we may have some externally facing successes, but that'll all catch up to you if you stagnate. When you stagnate, your business will eventually stagnate. And no matter
Mm.
what anyone says, time is the greatest barometer of the real state of fruit on a tree. It's either rotten
Oh.
or it's actually giving off something that people can feast off.
Yeah, man, it's amazing how these podcast episodes go in succession. Because if anybody was listening last week, you heard me speak about the day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit. And for anybody who
Mhm.
reflects in that gratitude, I was saying on the last episode how emotional I get when I tap into the gratitude, because oftentimes when you're planted, you're in darkness. And then not
Mhm.
only the darkness, and then there's the fear of that water coming onto you, and you don't know what's happening. And it's not until you break ground that you finally see the sun, but you still have a long way to go before the fruit comes out. But here's the thing, what you've just so beautifully put on top of that depiction was, even when the fruit comes out, you don't know if all your efforts and all the labor was pure until you taste
That's it. you just cooked with,
it.
you just cooked with hot grease, bro. You spoke it. That's it. And
Oh man.
to that point, man, going back to your question, I want to make sure I fully answer it. It's the little, just like in communicating your brand, for business owners here or people who are getting up there in their career and you need to know how to communicate your value to the C suite or to senior leaders. Or if you're communicating your brand so you can build your business, sometimes it's those little tiny tweaks that can produce quantum leaps. A
Mm.
couple of tiny tweaks that I made was actually putting a alarm clock, a well alarm clock that works well, because I'd gone to the cheap route. Like, let me go to the Goodwill, because there's an alarm clock. I don't really do those anymore. Going to get an actual alarm clock, removing my cell phone out of my room past a certain amount of time at night. Because it's just a temptation to pick that thing up and to toy around with it. And then, that death scroll can be deadly. Let's just be honest. Two
Yeah.
things. At the beginning of the year, deleting the Facebook and Instagram apps off my phone. I mainly do my business through LinkedIn. That's one of the easiest ways to link in with me. I am there on Facebook, kind of there on Instagram, still learning how that place works over there. But if I don't need it, is it a need? And we know when it comes, I don't want to speak about money too much because this isn't that type of podcast, but wealthy and rich men and women don't waste time.
Yeah.
That is one
Mm-mm.
factor you will see across the board. Their time is precious. And one
Yeah.
thing I say when people work with me, even when they come onto my podcast, you're giving me the third most precious commodity. Next to your faith and your family, it's your time. I'm not going to waste it.
Mm. I love that. And you're familiar with the Tools of Time course I just rolled out, and
Hmm.
and I've been really focused on that. Right, is not wasting time, and the death scrolling, or even identifying what's yielding the results that you're seeking. I mentioned in the course, I break down the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, the 20% of actions you take that yield 80% of your results, right?
Come
How
on now.
often do we audit and reflect on our actions and behaviors to really determine the value of what we're doing? And that gives us a clearer picture, because what we talked about before about retrospect and reflection, in terms of, in the first episode, a lot of the self-sabotaging behaviors that we do, one of the first steps I take towards time management is dump, right? if it's not serving you, it's not helping you, it's not pushing you towards this dream, it's not helping you get to where you're trying to get to, why are you doing it? Right. And we
Mm,
need to identify why we do that and then learn how to part ways from it, dumping those things. Because when you plug that hole in your boat, you could row so much faster. But so many people
mm.
are rowing with that drag in their boat because they haven't plugged the hole because they're afraid if they stop rowing, they stop moving. But as long as you have water leaking into your boat, you'll never reach optimal speed.
Okay, that's fire. Ted, can we pause and park there for a minute? Because you said a
Mhm,
lot of key things that I want to actually kind of hone in on. One, when it pertains to burnout, you talked on the back end about the constant motion,
mm,
and I've said it, I think I said it on the last podcast, but one thing I've coined, a phrase that I've coined with my clients is that the problem is in the pattern, but the power is in the pause. When we don't take that time to pause, we don't exactly discern why we're in motion. And so we really are unwittingly just moving without any actual, we haven't ideated of why is this a thing? Even in my title on LinkedIn, it talks about, 2xing your productivity, which is true. I've gotten numerical results, but even that, that's kind of a more of a marketing word, because if you
mhm,
think about productivity, we always want to be doing more, but efficient people get done in 4 hours, where productive people get done in 9 hours. Because efficiency says, how can I get to the same destination with a whole lot less effort? Where am I chewing the fat? What needs to be dumped? What do I not need to be doing? And
mm,
sometimes, if you think about the industrial age, it was all about productivity. How are we just churning out product, not considering all the cost of what it meant to churn out that product? So, how are we being financially cost effective, mentally cost effective, and spiritually cost effective? And what is the cost of not dumping? Another thing you said was, even when you mentioned dump, you didn't just say just dump. You said find out why you were doing these things. And there's a lot of power in why. I focus on root causes. It's like we don't do surface level work, so that'll give you surface level results. One thing that grinds my gears and that literally makes me want to just gouge my eyeballs out is when I log on to Instagram or LinkedIn or even Facebook and I see stop quotes. It's like, ugh. It's like, stop doing this. Stop doing this. Stop being a toxic manager. Stop. Nah, 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 nah. It's like a person who has been doing what they've been doing for 30 years is not just going to stop anything. Their brain neurologically is bent that way. It's not hardwired. That connotes finality, but it's bent that way. That practice has been perfected. And anything that you practice over time will eventually be perfected.
mhm.
It takes a knowing why, like you said, to unlearn before you can dump, because that makes the dump actually sustainable. If you dump externally, CBT, behavior modification, you will eventually take up the very thing that you discarded.
Yeah. Where's the value in the pause? Because you mentioned taking time off, taking the break. And for a lot of our listeners who are ambitious, who are scaling their businesses, who are owning franchises, the thought of a pause I mean, it's worse than an ice plunge for them. Like you tell me to pause, I'm trying to be productive, right? But you mentioned being economical with our money, our energy, our spirituality. And for anybody who's operating at 100%, all gas, no brakes, it's hard to articulate the importance of pumping the brakes to go faster. I'm curious as to the value you find in the pause and how we can convince some of our listeners to tap in to the realization that slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Well, I could go super clinical from my profession and really go there with you, or I could just go give a practical analogy based on what you just said. So you talked about the pausing, and you talked about moving forward with a vehicle. So let's just say I live in Washington, D.C. If I'm coming down to Tennessee to see you, I want to see my boy Ted. I want to kiss the baby. I want to see the family, yada, yada, yada. Then I want to go and hike with the Smokies with him.
Yeah.
If I do that on a quarter a tank, I don't think I'm going to make it all the way there. We're going to have some problems. By the time I get to, like, let's just say Roanoke, maybe even if I make it to Roanoke from DC, roadside assistance is going to have to come get me because the
Mhm.
car is then running on E. That wheel is already locked up by them. and I'm calling someone to come get me. So think about it this way, men and women who are listening. Pausing actually helps you to make those gas station and rest stops that you need to make the journey. If you do not pause, you are playing yourself. Going and going and going, at some point, your car is going to be empty. Your gas tank, your reserves are going to be empty. And though I know sometimes we lose time because it's like, okay, your ETA, when you leave the house, that ETA says, okay, you get there by like 6:30. It's like, okay, I got enough time to grab dinner with Ted before the next day. It's like, you know what? That ETA may turn into 7:45. But if I can avoid any accidents, any roadside assistance, just a whole lot of mess on the way, I'd rather get there safe and sound a little later than not get there at all because I crashed and burned along the way. Does that make sense? And so those
100%.
pauses afford you the time to literally refuel. Yes, in the literal sense. In the figurative, spiritive, and mental and spiritual sense, it also helps you to refuel so that you have a full reserve and you can actually complete the marathon from a sustainable standpoint. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Because I'm the person that gets in the car, I see ETA and I see time to beat, and I'm like, let's go. But that didn't go the same way this past holiday season. I drove up to New York, and to your point, what used to be, old Ted, grip the wheel. Let's leave at 11 p.m. I'll probably get there by 9 a.m. the next morning. Right? Stop maybe 1, 2 times just for gas, and that's it. Now I got a wife. I got a baby. I have a dog. Baby can't be in the car for 11 plus hours, right? So, we stopped on the way. We spent the night in Virginia at my sister's house. Then we took on the drive the next day. We got there safely, but we were able to not just stop at my sister's house on the way up, stop at my sister's house on the way down, get a night's rest, be more vigilant the next day. Others people might have gotten to accidents because they're tired, lethargic, making mistakes. I was able to stay more vigilant, keep the family safe in the back seat. Added bonus, my sister got to meet her her niece, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah, she got to meet Savannah. So I believe Abraham Lincoln has the quote. He said, "You give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Right?
Come on now.
If iron sharpens iron, so does one man sharpen another. But if you're a man and you're alone or listening to this, then who sharpens you? What's going on, guys? Ted Phaeton here, host of the Modern Man Podcast, also founder of the Noble Knights Mastermind Group. And I'm just out here encouraging you to find your circle. Maybe you're on a personal growth journey and nobody around you understands the new mentality that you're possessing. That's okay. You can find an online community that will pour into you, will navigate your goals and navigate your obstacles, share their experiences, resources, and more. Join the Noble Knights Mastermind Group and try us out for free to tap into a community of men helping each other scale up and reach their goals.
Check out themodernmanpodcast.com. Similar to the quarter tank of gas metaphor, if we don't have the proper tools, right? If you're taking all back roads, but you have an 18-wheeler, you can't take those roads, right?
Exactly.
How have the proper tools aided in your approach, or even for our listeners, how the proper tools could aid in their approach? Because we're honing in a lot on just that sustained energy in what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last episode, we talked about the limiting behaviors and everything that's in our boat. This episode, we're talking about plugging the boat, having the longevity to run this audacious race that we've laid out for ourselves. How do we get the right sneakers, man?
Are you getting into it now? I want to mention the A word, not the word y'all thinking about. But yeah, last episode we got down and dirty and raw. That was a men's episode. Make sure you check that
Still
out.
a lot
if
of
you
time in
haven't.
this one.
Oh my gosh. But I want to mention a word, audit. And so even answering your question and going back to piggyback on the last question, when we pause, we can actually take those audits. So for you business owners who are running extremely hard, or you senior leaders, you C-suite people who what you want teams to do, you have projects laid out, When you audit, that actually gives you the needed tools to sharpen your sword because you see what the gaps are. One thing I do with clients is mental gap analysis. We don't find out the root cause until we can do a gap analysis. Where are the holes at? How do we plug the holes if we don't see them? If we're constantly running at breakneck speed and we never take the time to pause and audit, we will constantly continue to run at breakneck speed and you will hit a wall. I can tell you this. I mean, my brand well. I built a global brand walking through the woods in DC and sweating Under Armour. I catch more when I'm on a slow stroll, praying and meditating than I do if I'm jogging through there. I'm going to see, okay, man, there's a spider web there. Oh, there's an actual, I didn't even know we had those types of species of bird here. And okay, there's a pretty big male deer over there watching me closely. Let me make sure I take a different route. He may be defending some doe. I see stuff that I don't normally see when I'm pausing, when I'm taking some time. And so these pauses are crucial to sharpening the sword and to actually setting up inventory, whether you do it for the whole year. I think a smart way to do it is quarterly, And so when you do that gap analysis, it prepares you to actually move forward, not just with head knowledge, but an actual physical plan you can put in place. And that plan will actually include things that are outside of your control. What's one thing we learned? Because I know your guys are either have been trained in project management, are project managers, or have project managers on their team. Okay, what causes scope creep, or what takes us over, or what are some problems we may run into? Nothing's going to go the way you ideally envision. And for your perfectionists, please hear me. Idealism is a fallacy. For you guys who want it to go a certain way at a certain time, let it go. Let it go right here at the beginning of 2025. Get free of that. So that way you stop sabotaging the very things that could actually not only 2x your business. You may be a 6-figure owner. You can be a 7, 8-figure owner if you'll stop sabotaging yourself through wanting perfection. When you take inventory, you actually embrace the idea that we can build a plane in the air and let the chips fall where it may.
I feel attacked, bro.
I'm so sorry.
Well, no, it's all
good.
good.
Love for you.
It's all good. It's all good. I'd say I'm not so much of a perfectionist per se anymore, but I was very hard on myself with deadlines, expectations until I had to identify someone. Oh, the beauty of good mentorship, good coaching. When someone Tim Pecoraro, he was a former guest on the podcast. He said, "Ted, who set those deadlines?" I said, "I did." Okay. So what repercussions are you giving yourself for missing them? I was like, well, nothing. He's like, okay. So why can't you just move the deadlines? If you set the deadline, why can't you move it? And I'm like, oh, well, because I'm in this perpetual loop, right? I set a goal, I need to hit it. I don't want to make excuses. I want to have results, right? Sure, there could be true to that, but your results should be progress, not perfection, right?
That's it.
I've learned to look at how far have you come? What did you do? And here's the piece that has helped me, man. It's the efforts and the actions I do belong to me. Do your best, put in the work, do what you got to do. The results and the outcomes, that belongs to God. That's that's not for me. God will do with it what must be done. But as long as I'm diligent and I put in the effort and I put in the actions, I have peace, bro.
Speak on it, bro. Something you just said made me think of a call I had with a prospect just a couple of weeks ago. And, they're building a 8-figure business out on the West Coast. And man, whenever there's any gap in the business, they take it personal. We didn't get that sale. We didn't get that, contract. We didn't get that investor. And the thing is this is why the root work is so important. Whatever your mentor was saying, he was actually getting to the root of your subconscious mind. It's not so much what your behavior is. The behavior is to actualize the goal, but what do you believe about you in the midst of that behavior? That is so key for both men and for women.
Yeah.
This is why, like with cognitive behavioral therapy, yes, I'm trained in it. It's effective to an extent, but one of the phrases I've coined is we want to work diligently on the belief that informs your behavior, because what you believe will always be the on-ramp to how you behave.
Man, let's go there.
Let's go.
You mentioned the gap analysis, auditing ourselves, identifying, hey, this might be where I want to be. This might be the self-sabotaging behaviors that's keeping me here. Let's look over here. When you work with clients, what are some of, I guess, the recurring blocks or the common misconceptions people have about why they do what they do? And what are some of the revelations that they have? Maybe some of our listeners might be able to relate to uh, some of the patterns you've recognized.
You got it. Well, for reasons, legal purposes of confidentiality, I cannot mention names, but
Obviously,
we'll give some
correct.
examples. One of the most common themes is, and this is even around folks who are 6 and 7 figure earners, there is a scarcity mindset around money. And I know that doesn't even make sense. It's like, how are
Yeah.
people who are top earners struggling with a scarcity mindset? And a lot of it is found in the childhood. Sometimes you find that people come from humble beginnings. And if they watch their parents struggle, or even if they watch their parents, I've had multiple clients whose parents may have been very wealthy and then they lost everything. What does that do to a child? What do they begin to record? You've heard me say it before, you hear me say it again. Children are the greatest recorders, yet the poorest interpreters of information. At a young age, we don't have language to process the intel we're receiving. And so through that intel, we create what? Mechanisms that become what? Habits that we know psychologically as what? Defense mechanisms. And so the very high performance that we project is an actual defense mechanism. We are operating out of fear. And so a lot of clients that I have, it's like we have to expose, is fear of failure or fear of succeeding? Is that what motivates you? What is your driver? We got to deal with the driver. Now, I know you do have some female listeners, but we are all very much Mack trucks. And one thing you see about a Mack truck, even with all those mirrors, they still have blind spots. So we have to uncover the blind spots. Speaking of Mack trucks, if you ever go to Walmart at 5 o'clock in the morning, and why would you be there at that time? You'll see it. The parking lot is just full of these. I call them just a bunch of Optimus Primes. It's like, why are all these trucks here? Obviously they're unloading their inventory. The funny thing about that is I'm always grateful that I see at least men your age, my age, a little bit younger than us. If I see a 5-year-old or a 12-year-old, I'm going to get a little scared. And I'm probably going to take my time getting on the road if that person's pulling off the parking lot. How many of us men, how many people who are listening have a 12-year-old, a 5-year-old in the driver's seat? We have to heal the boy so that the man can live.
Come on now. I said there was a lot of time left in this episode.
You and me go
the
there.
boy so the man can live. But the boys, and I'm gonna role play here. Let's role play.
Okay.
The boy's taking me so far, Jahmaal. Look at everything I've got. I'm a 7-figure earner. The boy's built this life. What's wrong with him driving?
Well, I would ask you, what are the boys' patterns? Obviously, you've come to me. You're looking for some help. You have some addictions. There's trouble in your marriage. There's even trouble in your social life. The feedback coming from different team members about your leadership obviously is not healthy. You may be coming up on some high turnover. So obviously, there's some issues that we need to deal with here. Not to mention the fact that you're getting less than 5 hours of sleep a night. So obviously, the boy in the driver's seat, while he may have monetary success, I would say spiritually, socially, emotionally, and psychologically, there seems to be some fails that we need to deal with right at the root.
I want to solve those, Jahmaal, but I don't want to give up my financial success. And I'm afraid that if I give up the boy, I give up everything that I've built my life to become. How do I take care of both?
That's a valid fear. That's very valid because numbers count. And in your industry, some of those pauses can actually be extremely detrimental to bottom line. However, I want to pose this to you. If you don't take the time to make this investment now, where does your business in 3 years, based on the data you've come to me with? And where's your business in 5 years? I liken it to this. And I know you go to work out because you're a person who is very fit. You work out because you know the capacity of your body. If I hand you something that is outside of your capacity, you will injure yourself and you won't come back to the gym for 4 months. So would you rather take a month to work on these things or 4 months to be injured and not come back and then lose a lot of time and momentum? Let's bring that back to you. If your business crashes as a result of you not dealing with this and stagnating from the inside because you're headed towards a brick wall, then what? I think the time to pause is now because this is going to save you not a lot of time, but revenue, but also peace of mind going forward in the future.
I'm scared, Jahmaal. I don't know what's on the other side.
That eternal resistance means that you're wanting to do something right. There should be resistance. Anytime I've ever made a hard decision, there's always been both external, physiological, and internal resistance. If you don't feel any resistance, that means we shouldn't be having this conversation.
Okay. So what's the first step look like?
One, pick up the phone, air out those things those places you'd rather not go there. Uh, I would say that the domain of permanent failure is always darkness. Come into the light. And I know as men, that's a very daunting task for us because sometimes that coming into the light, that being open, that being vulnerable has been met not only with resistance, but also with some shame. And also it's been met with the very thing that reinforces the fear of rejection that many of us have. And so I can understand the fear, but we got to start somewhere, and you need a safe place to process these things. And there are safe places.
What does it look like when I let the man take the driver's seat? Am I going to be okay?
At first, it's going to be pretty scary because the man knows things that the boy doesn't. The man has a message for the boy. He doesn't run as fast as the boy. I know you watch sports, and so NFL players are a lot more strategic than college players. They don't have to cover as many yards because they realize they don't need to. They can get the ball in the end zone and get more W's. They take a whole lot less L's because they're strategic. So the man will actually get you greater results than the boy ever could. The boy's been having you run at breakneck speed and getting 40%. You've been getting a trickle of the results for your business. The man can actually get you into the 70 and 80 percentile because he's more strategic with his partnerships, with his relationships, with his self, with his own body.
Last question. When the man's in the driver's seat and I have full control, if I identify a situation in which the boy would be better suited, is he still able to drive?
Oh, that is a really good question. You've been given agency and you have free will. Who do you want to put in the driver's seat? That's going to totally be up to you. I could advise you, I could tell you, but I want you to make that decision. Take an inventory of the last 40 some odd 30 years of your life. What's happened when the boy has entered the driver's seat? And if you put the boy back in the driver's seat, you'll reinforce his habits, his thoughts, his patterns, his addictions. You choose. And
Perhaps the man.
You'll also potentially reinforce his liability towards an accident.
And you don't want to hit the wall just when you started getting control, right?
Precisely.
I appreciate you going there with me, man.
No problem, brother.
Well, because I'm putting myself in the shoes of the listeners because it is daunting, right? The devil we know better than the devil we don't, right?
Come on now.
If we are looking at where we are, taking responsibility, not fault, responsibility for our lives and where we've ended up, and making a conscious decision to change, there's a mourning and an internal death that we need to acknowledge. And it's so hard to let go because, like relationships, two people are breaking up. The person who is doing the breaking up, they're like, this relationship has been terrible. It's been horrible. And their recollection and their reflection is all negative. So they want it to end. but the person who doesn't want the relationship to end, right? So I imagine the mind state that I'm in when I call you, because I got to get this boy out of the driver's seat. The mind state that I'm in is the one who's breaking up. But once I'm on the phone and the reality of breaking up comes, now the boy is speaking and the boy doesn't want to go, right? Because my recollection of this relationship, right? I want the relationship to stick around. So I think it's been great. Look at all the fun we've had. Look at all the people we've passed on this roadway. We didn't know the speedometer can go this fast. Like, why would we want to stop? And sometimes we are all gung ho to let go until the reality comes in, until it's actually that time to cross that threshold. What have you found that gives people strength to take that final step or to take that initial leap towards that new life?
I'm going to try to say this in a way that makes sense. But I would say the understanding that we're at war. One thing I used to say to my clients, especially when I started years ago, this is like back in like early 2010s. There's no winning without warfare, no victory without vigilance, no overcoming without opposition. There is going to be opposition. Opposition from within and also opposition from without. From without, you have the hard data that, hey, what the boys been doing has been working. we got some numbers stacked up, man. Look at what's happening in the market. From within, you actually also have that euphoria and those dopamine rushes that come from those numbers. And so understand that there's going to be resistance from within and from without. What causes a person to cross over is, I would say, enough affliction when they've actually examined the affliction that brought them to me. Like, wait a minute, Covey has a really powerful quote, and it says, begin with the end in mind. And sometimes we can only forecast so far. Sometimes we're only willing, but I like to frame forward. Like, what does this look like in 3 to 5 years? And when a person can actually forecast at least enough of that, and they see, okay, this is going to head towards a brick wall, just like, of course, with the Dow, you can only know so much day to day. But sometimes in our businesses, in our personal lives, in our communities, you can forecast and see, like, wait a minute, this is not going to end well. I'm not going to be the exception to the rule.
Yeah.
And when a person realizes that, and there's enough crisis data points that have led them to that point, they say, all right, let's get started. I'm not going to be one who plays around with this. And I'm not going to be the statistic thinking that I was the one who could actually avoid the landmine that blew everyone else up who was in my same situation.
Yeah. I think have you ever seen the show Power on Starz?
A while ago. I think I saw a couple episodes. I'm not a big TV watcher.
All good. The premise of the show, big time New York City drug dealer, gets into the nightclub scene, and we think it's a whole ploy to launder money, right? It's the nightclub, launder money. Turns out he has ambitions of going legit. And there's a scene where his wife, who was with him on the up and up through the drug trades and everything, and now he's this big top drug dealer and they have the nice house and everything, sees him trying to go legit, but she's still like, why? And he said something. He says, I don't know any old drug dealers. And it's a moment where you realize this character is mature enough, intelligent enough to recognize the life we have is good, but we have kids. And I look around, ain't nobody retiring from the drug game, collecting their Social Security and their retirement all comfortable. Right. Now, I hope for our listeners it's not as extreme as that. But to your point, the mark of intelligence is recognizing the pattern in which you're on and changing it. Saying, hey, I've seen this. We know how this ends. I'm going to make a change. And I hope, and I expect everyone who hit the play button on this podcast, already the fact that you're the type to hit play on the title that you've read. And if you roll with Jahmaal or myself, you are the type to be intuitive, curious. So you already have that intelligence in you to wonder what is next. But it's, like you said, it's those who have the forethought and the foresight to see where this is headed to really make the proper adjustments. And I'll finish with this point, and I'm sure you have an amazing reflection and insight on what I said. I say this in my Tools of Time course. The Apollo rockets spend 97% of their journey from Earth to the moon off course. Only 3% of the time are they on course towards the moon, yet they arrive with precision timing simply by making course corrections along the way. So back to that GPS example you mentioned, going from DC, coming down, we're going to go hiking Crowder's Mountain and all that. Yes, knowing where you are and your destination is important. Stopping for gas is important. Having the proper tools is important. But also, if there's a road closure, there's traffic, and there's detours, your GPS is constantly rerouting and reassessing the path that takes you from where you are to where you're going to go. And I just hope that's a word of encouragement for folks who might feel like they're off their path, they're not on it, and or they might do that gap assessment or realize I'm heading in the wrong direction. Cool. It's not the end of the world. You can now course correct for the rest of the way.
Really nothing I can add to that masterpiece. And that course correction, even that, think about when the GPS does course correct. And then what is after course correct, what do you get? From that yellow, from the green to the yellow to the red, it's like, that's my ETA. It's you just automatically just tie your face up like, oh, instead of getting there we're getting there at 7:45, you're still gonna be upset. It's still not ideal. It's still not, it doesn't perfectly fit that vision that a lot of us have. Like, this is what I wanted to do. This is how I want to accomplish it. And instead of thinking about what we learned during the journey, we think about getting to the destination, being the first one to get there, or getting there at the time we thought. And so understanding this, that as you make those pauses, as you make that gap analysis, you may be upset that this thing doesn't happen as fast as you want it to. Because if you've been doing and living your life 20, 30, 40 plus years in a certain way, it takes time to unlearn those things. Any coach out here promising you some silver bullets, I'm telling, they're lying. Run. And I'm not saying this as someone who's just clinically trained, who's been doing what I've been doing with 16 plus years of experience. Run. Get out of there. They are a quack. They are there to waste your time and revenue. Understand that this thing is going to take time. And one thing I say in my LinkedIn newsletter, the work I do isn't sexy, but it's effective. Yeah. You know, I can tell you this as somebody who is, I'm actually a year older than the last time we talked. So the birthday was, crossed over into the 4s. And we did like.
Still looking good.
Thank you, sir. I can't be anti-burnout and I'm out here looking melted. That's just not going to fly. I am the brand.
Not good for the brain, yeah.
I'm trying to tell you. And so within 5 or 6 celebrations, I've had like 6 to 7 pieces of very nice, some expensive cake. And I'm paying the price now in the gym. Those workouts are not sexy. It's just, I don't enjoy that time of thrashing to now, lose the weight and get back into shape. But it needs to happen, for my own physical, spiritual, and mental wellness. So to the men here and even some of the women that are listening, please understand that the process is not going to be sexy. You want sustainable results. Just like when you get into the gym, you would you hate to just spend all the money on a trainer to get in really good shape for 4 months and then put all the weight back on. And then the body starts to adjust to, it draws nutrients from junk. And then your cortisol levels are rising with stress. And you wonder, why can I not get it off this time? Because you're more stressed out than you were last time.
Or I see a lot of people, and I'm all for anything that motivates people to get in shape or change their life a bit, right? But I'm in the wedding season, my dad calls it. My dad's got a very morbid sense of humor. One of his friends passed not too long ago. He's like, it's the season. I'm in my 80s. All my friends, he's like, you're in your wedding season. I'm in my funeral season. But he's like, you're in the wedding season, and I see a lot of couples. They get their date of the nuptials, and they hire the trainers, and they lose all the weight, and they look good in their wedding dress and their tux. and then they party it up, and then they go right back to their behavior and their habits before they got engaged. And I was like, man, wouldn't it be so great if the wedding was the launch pad for that new lifestyle, right? If it was like, hey, we did this, we look great on our wedding day, and we perpetuate that. But unfortunately, it's not always the case. So, not sexy, but sustainable is really where the magic happens. And that's honestly, this whole episode has been about doing the not sexy work. We're not talking about, I don't care if you're in a Porsche 911 or in a Honda Odyssey. You're not trying to go down the highway 97 miles an hour. You're going to take those stops, the rest stops, because you're going to get there. And if you're in the Porsche 911 going as fast as you can, you do have the increased chance of an accident. So, despite how nice the car is or how beat up the car is, the behavior and the actions are the same because you want that effective output. We're coming up on the end. I want to make sure you have an opportunity to touch on um, how folks can connect with you, how they could reach out and maybe even get some resources to help them if they're in their thick of burnout, stagnation, lack of productivity, really just trying to jumpstart things here through 2025. Here, this episode's coming out in February 2025. Their New Year resolutions are holding on by a thread, and they're looking for for a pick me up. So, what are some of the best links and perhaps resources you can provide?
You got it, man. One of the easiest ways to find me is get linked with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Jahmaal Marshall that spells my name this way. LinkedIn has horrible search, but it's easy to find me.
Yeah.
So I keep a pretty clean footprint because I'm the easiest person to find online and like all the internet. You
Yeah.
can just Google me. But that's a place that I'm super active, doing obviously certified counseling and executive coaching. Um, Another place, my website, Listen and Speak, that'll be in the show notes. But I want to touch on one of the most common questions I get, which is how do you manage yourself while managing so much work and so many people? I've worked with folks from Nike, Zillow, Honda, Amazon, executives from small tech companies, large tech companies. And so these people manage teams of over 50 folks who actually manage other people. So you think about that workload. And that's why I
Mm.
created this burnout mini course. It's designed to help you take a deeper look at what's really going on beneath the surface and take practical tips that'll save you both time, money, and energy. This course goes beyond the surface levels because, I mean, as you can tell from the conversation, I don't do surface level work. It'll help you identify what drives and what motivates you, and also assess your current coping techniques. So
Mm.
it's also chock full of worksheets and cheat sheets. I've taken 16 years of experience and put together a whole cheat sheet that you can go through at your own pace, and journal prompts to help you implement what you learn. So
Mm.
the total value of the course is worth $1,500, but I'm so passionate about what I do, as you know, in helping folks thrive. Normally we offer it at $397, but for those who are listening to this podcast, the noble knights, noble women who are listening, we're offering it at $97. So I live in
Mm.
DC. That's like an expensive dinner with your
Yeah.
family. So I say,
I
yo,
can't take Jess out for that.
exactly, bro. That's a good dinner with your girl or your wife. So don't wait. You know, don't wait and like say, well, I'll hop on that later, man. Another year, another decade could go by, and you'll be stuck in the same place. You'll be like wondering, okay, we got a 7-figure business. Why is your business still stuck the way it is? This is a dinner for some of us. Grab the link
Yeah.
in the show notes on YouTube, or whether you're on Spotify, Apple, wherever you are, it'll be there. And as soon as you hit the link, it'll actually go straight to the course. I'll leave you with this. I work with a client, and recently they came to me on the brink of burnout, high stress. And through tailored strategies, through consistent commitment, because it's not sexy, they doubled their productivity, they leveraged their team's strengths, they achieved career milestones they never had before, they never thought were possible. So when we wrapped up, I share with them these words. I told them, because of the work you've done to heal, there are team members and leaders that will never have to heal from you. And let me tell
Oh.
you, they were overcome with relief, with joy, uh, because the hard data that we went over, because I measure everything, had backed up their transformation. You're no different. Men who are listening, imagine leading a team that's thriving, living free from burnout, feeling joy every day in life and business. The future is closer than you think. So if you're ready to claim that, grab the link in the show notes. Grab that mini course, man, and actually share it. People who may not listen say, hey, I grabbed this. I want you to share it too. You can give them You can give them the discount code because the discount code will be there. I want as many people as possible to experience this. Don't let it slip away, man. Let's build that legacy of leadership that you deserve. Let's get into it.
Do it now. I love that, man, because everyone who is healing from trauma, healing from uh, past occurrences, it typically happened in a public setting. And when I say public setting, it was someone else doing it to them, whether it was a parent to child, a friend to a friend, a spouse to another. Someone did it to them. And just to think that the healing that you offer, the healing that everyone listening to this episode has access to through this link that Jahmaal so graciously is offering, you can then stop the train, right? It ran through your family till it ran into you. It ran through your community until it ran into you. And that is the power that you have with that link. Jahmaal, love, appreciate you. I'll have the links in the show notes below. You already know the question I'm going to ask. Similar to the last time, if it's the same answer, it's okay. If not, maybe since we've last spoke, being a year older, you're a year wiser, you might have more insights to share. What is something that has happened to you that shapes the way you view the world of man, or something you've seen?
Man, something I've seen that has shaped the way I view the world is nature. I'm often out in nature so much, man. And so I get to see, especially living here in DC, I see all four seasons. And
Yeah.
there's an ancient scripture in the book of Ecclesiastes says there's a time to live, a time to die, a time to embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. And it goes on and on. And so I really get to see the times change and understand how precious time is. It's our one non-renewable resource. And when you get a visual of how stuff lives and dies and comes and goes, it says, man, I cannot get back the time that I lost, but I can redeem the time I have.
What's your favorite season?
I love spring. Spring doesn't always love me back because of my allergies, but I love me some spring, man.
I was the same way. My nose will all blow up and my sinuses hit me. I'm all cloudy and foggy, but I'm like, it's spring. Might have some cognitive dissonance there I got to work on, but we love spring. And the thing I love about fall, and I'm sure you're likely familiar with the quote on the beautiful thing about fall is all the trees show us how beautiful it is to let things go, or let the dead things go.
Yes. Bro, I don't say this about too many people, man. You're like a brother from another mother.
Likewise. Oh, man. Counselor, podcaster, consultant out of Washington, D.C., Jahmaal Marshall. I'd say thank you to be on the podcast. Thank you for being who you are, but I just feel like those words don't do it justice, man. My heart is full. My cup is full. I'm grateful, and I know the audience is immensely better because of the time that you took today. So thank you so much. Thank you, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for creating this space.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to recap everything really quick, share the gems along the way. Keeping energy in reserves. So many of us are all gas, no brakes. We go all in. Anything we're going to do, we're going to go all in and commit to it. Now, it's important to commit, but are you keeping energy in the reserves to make it through the long haul? Are you sprinting right out the gate and then losing steam to make it through the second half of the race? Problem in the pattern, but the power is in the pause. You heard that last time, worth repeating. If you don't pause, reflect, assess, audit, you don't truly get the true picture of where you're actually going. And if you continue to drive as fast as you're going, you risk missing a blind spot and potentially hitting a wall. And then pause and take the audit for the gap analysis. Where are you? Where are you trying to go? And what are the things that are holding you back? Those actions, those activities that might be stopping you from that life you want to live, the future you're trying to go to. And not just identifying what they are, but getting to the root cause, as Jahmaal says. Why do we do what we do? Might be scary, might be uncomfortable, but as our role playing shows, if you don't change, you fear experiencing the fate that you see coming on the horizon. Scarcity mindset, fear. Despite your success, are these still things that are running your life? Because what helped you survive childhood might not be useful in adulthood. And just because it's taken you far doesn't mean it's the tool that can take you where you need to go. It's not sexy, but it's effective. You can open up Instagram, you find all the beautiful accounts, the cars, the luxury, and all that. And a lot of gurus who will be standing right next to them telling you how they did it. How effective is it? Focus on effectiveness, not sexiness. And of course, the importance of nature, the beauty of the four seasons, how beautiful it is to let dead things go, and imagine the power and really the healing that you can help perpetuate when you heal yourself, and others won't have to heal from the afflictions or the trauma that you put onto them. It's quite frankly, quite possibly one of the best and greatest ways you can serve your team is by taking care of yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, I know we referred to the ladies along the way. All 17% of you, shout out to you ladies that listen to the podcast. To the fellas, each and every single week, thank you for rocking with us. Jahmaal, thank you for being on the show. You already know I'm going to ask that you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button to catch new fire every week, and then leave us a rating. Let us know how we're doing. The best way we can improve and serve you is by that conversation, communication. Give us any feedback, any insights. I got thick skin. I can handle the honesty. But of course, it's all about serving you guys and continuing to bring you these conversations. And I hope you guys continue to share this with anyone else you know that will get value from it. Like I always say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.